Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, September 1st CDC meeting. And this evening, I will go ahead and call us to order. And please note, all members are present. Thank you so much. Very short agenda this evening. We'll look under old business. Seeing no old business, we'll move straight on to new business, which is a resolution to consider this evening, Resolution 2021-01, and Mr. Ben Bontrager.
Good evening, CDC members. This may be a small and quick resolution, but this is a pretty exciting occasion here. This is the last public meeting that we're going to need in terms of adopting documents associated with the Brakeman project, which is scheduled to close on September 9th. And we're moving forward. So this, as we were talking about a little bit before the meeting, this originally started back in December of 2017 when the city acquired the property. So we've been working on this about 3.5 years. So this has been a long time coming, but we've got getting all the I's dotted and T's crossed, and we're ready to get this thing closed in the next week and hopefully start seeing some activity before the end of the year. What's before you tonight is actually an updated or amended resolution that you adopted back in November of last year, which essentially spells out the actions that the CDC has committed in terms of the project, and then authorizing Missy to sign on behalf of the CDC all the additional closing documents, which I have at least the signature pages for here, and all these tabs are places for Missy to sign. So I hope you got your pen ready. But what this resolution states is, again, I said the activities that the CDC is responsible for. So just quickly running through them again. And the only real substantive change of this document from what you adopted back in November was restating the loan amount, the CDC loan amount. Previously, we had a higher loan amount of $2.2 million based on some of the project numbers we were looking at that time. We had to essentially restructure how the project deal was getting put together, and the loan amount actually got reduced. So now it's a 1.425 million. 1.4 is a loan amount. The $25,000 will cover any of the bank fees that we're expecting. We're actually expecting to be slightly less than that, but we went ahead and put the 1.425 million just to cover what we expect the bank fees to be, and we're going to go ahead and roll those into the loan and finance those out too. So it'll probably end up being some number slightly less than that, but we did want to just make sure we got that covered. So in terms of walking through it, the first portion of that is that, as you recall, the CDC now is actually listed as the owner of the property, both on the west and east sides of the road. So you would be selling the west building site to the developer for a purchase price of $320,000. You'll be entering into an agreement with the developer to use the east side as a parking lot for the development. Also granting the developer an option to purchase that east side site at some future date. Let me see. You'll also be entering into a grant agreement with the Redevelopment Commission. So if you recall, the Redevelopment Commission collects TIF associated with the site or tax increment associated with the site. They will then grant annually the amount that is necessary for the CDC to pay the bank loan. So this group will enter into a grant agreement with the RDC in terms of what that grant payment will look like. And then finally, you would enter into a loan with the bank for $1.425 million. The proceeds from that loan will go to the developer to offset costs associated with developing the project. And that's kind of the gist of that. And then the rest of this is just acknowledging that the directors, you three directors, will consent to executing any project agreements and other ancillary documents moving forward, and authorizing Missy to sign on the CDC's behalf. And that kind of covers it in terms of the resolution. And then there's a bunch of additional closing documents that we'll just need signed as a result of this resolution being adopted by the full CDC. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
So Ben, just to clarify, there was a question. At the time this was drafted, it made more sense for Missy to sign rather than myself as president because her employment was in town. So any of these documents were easier to sign at that point.
Yeah.
So, and I believe that's the way the resolution reads, correct?
Yeah, it was all about availability to get everything signed. And,
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, absolutely. So with that, any questions for Ben? Seeing none, Rob, should we read this in?
Yes, thank you. I won't read it verbatim, as Ben gave a pretty good overview, but this is Resolution 2021-01. Again, it's the directors of the LCDC deem it advisable and in the best interest of the LCDC to convey to the developer the real estate that's set forth in this resolution. And that's bounded by West Elm Street, South Lebanon Street, West South Street, and Southwest Street. And that's defined as the west building site, and that's all set forth, as you recall, under the project agreement. To the developer, and that, again, Ben reiterated about the real estate being conveyed for the purchase price at $320,000. Further grants the developer an easement for the use of parking spaces on the real estate. It further allows, as Ben indicated, certain other agreements that will be executed for the developer relating to the parking lot, construction, and operating agreement. And it grants the developer an option to purchase the east building site, subject to certain conditions that are all set forth in the other ancillary documents of the option agreement. So therefore, be it resolved that the directors of the LCDC hereby consent to the execution and the delivery of, or by the LCD of such agreements and instruments conveying the west building site, including additional documents as may be required by the title company. And those would be considered the closing documents. And further, that this board authorizes the loan, including without limitation the loan documents. It authorizes Director Missy Krulik to execute and deliver the project agreement, all the ancillary documents, the loan documents, and the closing documents on behalf of the LCDC. And that the members acknowledge and consent to that all actions and prior actions taken by Missy Krulik as director of the LCDC and that are approved by this resolution.
Perfect. So that covers reading it in. We have the overview of the resolution itself. So with that, I would entertain a motion on Resolution 2021-01.
I second the motion.
Well,
I make a motion that we approve resolution number 2021-01.
perfect. So we have a motion and
I
then a second. Rock and roll. So with that, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Well, luckily, that is the only item on our agenda this evening. So thank you all for joining, and we will see you at the next meeting.